Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Of course, reminding you that you are worthy of love, both giving and receiving love, and you are worthy of your own self-respect. We're all geeks about something, so lean into your inner geek. I firmly believe that this is the way we kind of chip away at the wall between us and our own self-respect is embracing your inner geek, rekindling an old hobby, finding a new hobby, just exploring this great world that we have in front of us, this universe, all the possibilities, all the things out there in the cosmos to explore. That surely there's something out there for you to latch onto and geek out about and give you some self-esteem, at least a way to, like I said, start chipping away at the wall between you and your self-worth. I know a lot of times it's the easiest thing not the easiest thing in the world, but it can often be easier to love someone else or think we love somebody else than it is to love ourselves. A lot of the time, it feels like it's almost impossible to love ourselves. So find your geek thing. We're all geeks about something. Lean into your geek thing. And I think the road starts there for a lot of us. Onto the show here, onto the podcast. Why do men flick their boogers on the walls around urinals? This just got real quick. I just got back from the bathroom and boy, are my arms tired. No. But boy, am I grossed out. I mean, a men's room is naturally just a gross place. But women, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I've been a custodian in the past. I know that at the risk of getting some feedback from the ladies out there, but women's rooms tend to be worse overall than men's rooms. And there's probably some women out there thinking, yeah, I could see that. But there's something that men do in the urinal, at the urinal part of the men's room, that I have just not seen in women's room. Maybe I just haven't been in a women's room in a recently enough, if this is a new thing. Not that I go into women's room, not that I'm going to be a creep or anything like that, but I used to be a janitor, so during off hours, when the business was closed, in this case, the school I used to attend, high school actually, truth be known, the elementary school bathrooms had nothing on the high school girls' bathroom in terms of just overall grossness. At least as a male, as a teenage male, I knew what to expect kind of from the elementary and middle school bathrooms versus high school girls' bathrooms. Just, there are things that I can't unsee. But let's fast forward to adulthood, and you're in an office building, and you have a men's room, you have the women's room. The men's room at the urinals, almost without fail, if you look up from the urinal, you will see snot and dried up boogers usually all over the wall of the men's room. Is this a thing in women's rooms nowadays? Adults' women's rooms, are the stalls, are they coated in boogers and snot like the way that men's room urinals are? So sorry to be so gross about this, but it's just something that bugs me every single time I go to the urinal. Is it just... It's not just my workplace. Any urinal I go to, any office setting urinal that I've ever been in has had at least a few boogers on the wall. And here's why this is just what's on my mind right now. This is Geek Therapy Radio Podcast. I'm free to explore different things and go down different rabbit holes. And right now, I'm all fired up. I'm not geeking out about maybe, but I'm all fired up about boogers in men's room urinals. What boggles my mind about it is, all right, imagine you're a dude and you're standing there at the urinal doing what men do at the urinals, and you need to blow your nose, or why are you picking your nose at the urinal anyways? That's another thing. And you got to assume this is an adult workplace. 99% of the male species of human that goes into the men's room in an office environment are adult men. Why is an adult man standing there preoccupied with, what he's doing, and he's got a free hand, maybe, and what does he decide to do with that hand? Shove a finger up his nose? My wife will tell you that I am not exactly... I can be pretty gross sometimes. Rarely I can be pretty gross. But I don't stand there at the urinal picking my nose. I don't understand it. So it boggles my brain on many counts. You're standing there doing your thing. You got a free hand. Why do some men figure they put that? Oh, I can do anything with this hand. I'll put a finger up my nose. That's strike one. That's the first part of the bafflement here. Second part of the bafflement is that, okay, I've got a booger on my finger now. And again, I apologize for being gross. I'm just being real here. Okay, now I do have a booger on my finger. What do I do with it? I think I'll just flick it up onto the wall. That is the second round of mind-bogglingness to me. Because you're standing there at a toilet or a urinal that's designed to take stuff out of your body and flush it away to the water treatment or wherever it goes. So you're standing there with a waste receptacle right in front of you, but you'll flick that booger up and onto the wall. What is the disconnect there? Whatever comes out of your body, if it's liquid or gelatinous, I'm sorry for being so gross. Put it in the urinal. You know what I found? Oh my gosh. Do you know what I found in the urinal the other day? Well, too bad, I'm going to tell you. I found 2 packets of tobacco chew. I don't know what they're called. Are they new? They're not new things. They can't be new things. Is it snuff? Is that what it's called? Basically, it's just prepackaged packets of tobacco, just like tea bags, like you make tea with. But it's these little baggies, maybe about an inch long, half an inch wide, that you're supposed to stick up in your cheeks, and it's supposed to be a cleaner way of chewing tobacco or getting your nicotine fix. I don't know. I've never chewed tobacco. I never plan on starting to chew tobacco. But I found 2 of those packets in the urinal. Ladies, well, you can't imagine it, ladies. Never mind. But the urinal, guys, you know what a urinal is. You know that there's only one type of waste that's supposed to go into a urinal. Like I said before, liquid or gelatinous. And by that I mean a loogie. Spit, snot, what have you. Sorry, again, getting so gross with this. Not solid objects. Now some pranksters do solid stuff in here. Why am I talking about this? But like actual trash. Packets of tobacco is actual trash. What goes on? And again, to reiterate this, these are adult men. Adult men. Some of them making a decent amount of money, professionals in their field, established. Yet they are just spitting their packets of tobacco into the urinal. They're flicking their boogers up on the wall. It doesn't make sense. Just if you're gonna have your finger up your nose in that situation, flick it into the urinal. If you're chewing tobacco, you're in a bathroom. There's a toilet there. There's all sorts of receptacles in that bathroom. There's toilet, there's a urinal, there's trash cans. If there's something solid coming out of you, put it anywhere, literally, than the urinal. Whether it's trash out of your mouth, whether it's trash in general, paper towels, it boggles my mind what men do at the urinal. And I'm curious, do women, obviously they don't have urinals, typically, in a woman's bathroom. Are there things that women do in the bathroom that boggle the minds of other good-natured, well-mannered women? I don't even want to speculate on what could possibly be on par with the grossness or greater than the grossness of flicking boogers all over the wall. And I think, okay, so back to the men and flicking boogers. And you know what? I'm looking at my clock here. I'm doing 10 minutes on this subject. This is a loose 10 minutes on the disgusting things that happen around the men's urinal. I got to think that some of the men flicking boogers onto the wall of the urinals are thinking, oh, the custodial staff will get it. Well, that's also horrible on a few fronts. First of all, just because they're the custodial staff does not mean that gives you the right to just put your bodily fluids all over the place and assume they'll clean it up. Just because their job is to be a custodian doesn't mean that gives you the right to start putting your, in many cases, dangerous bodily fluids all over the place for them to clean up. What kind of... That is not a cool thing to do. As geeks, we are better than that. It just doesn't. It makes sense, and it's kind of it's a rude thing to do. It's not right. Don't do it. I don't know. I just I just don't get it. Flick your boogers into the urinal. It is literally there to take that kind of thing away. Why flick it up? Flick it down. Or just wait, blow your nose after you're done. It just boggles my mind that boogers wind up on the wall in front of the urinal. It is absolutely disgusting. And if I'm saying it's disgusting, you know it's really disgusting. What else was I going to talk about? Well, I mean, I know what I was going to get onto. I was going to talk a little bit about... So I've been telling you that I've been working on this video for the past few weeks for the YouTube channel, and I've got the script written. I don't even know how much of it is written, a few pages of it written, but it centers around the Q6600. Not to get bogged down with too much of the labels and the terms and the serial numbers and anything like that, but basically the general thought process of this video, what I'm trying to convey here is basically it's asking the question, how good is a 15-year-old or so processor in 2020? Essentially, can you still use a computer that's about 15 years old in 2020? Is it still useful in any way, shape, or form? Is it useful for gaming? Is it useful for productivity? Is it useful for office tasks? And I know a lot of you are out there thinking right now, bro, at my work, we're using computers that are 20 years old. Maybe that's the case. But in this video, I'm delving into some numbers. I'm actually doing some benchmarks. I'm actually playing some games on this. I'm taking actual data, and that's where I'm at right now. I've taken some interesting data thus far, pairing the Q6600, which just to be technical for a second here, is a quad-core, non-hyper-threaded. That is, it only has 4 actual threads of processing power in it. It's clocked at 2.4 gigahertz. I am not overclocking it at all. Front side bus of 1066 megahertz, and I've been able to put a maximum of 8 gigabytes of RAM at that 1066 megahertz of RAM, DDR3 RAM, into the system. And just going from there. I've tried to put 16 gigs, and maybe your mileage may vary. Maybe it can technically take 16 gigs. Maybe some motherboards, possibly. I've got 3 or 4 socket 775 motherboards. I'll get through the technical details in a second. But all I can do is 8 gigabytes. And 8 gigabytes, even today in 2020, is a decent amount of system RAM to get real work done. I wouldn't recommend 8 gigabytes if you want to do massive video projects or massive audio projects or anything like that. Any sort of hardcore, massive projects, and for video editing, audio editing, photo editing, things like that. But for some light gaming, for office work, by all means, 8 gigabytes of RAM is still going to be good for years to come now. Overall, I'd recommend at least 16 gigabytes of RAM just for a good all-arounder PC, but 8 gigabytes still is plenty doable, plenty to get you by for the next few years. So in this build with the Q6600, quad-core CPU, 8 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM at 1066 megahertz, and what I've been doing is pairing it with different video cards. In this test here, I have 6 different video cards. And again, this is all just stuff I have laying around. These are old video cards up to the newest video card that I have, which is still old technologically in terms of computer technology. I've got a GTX 980. That's the newest video card I have. It's still no slouch. It can still do VR just fine. It's still a beefcake graphics card. But anyways, I've been pairing everything back from a GTS 250 with 512 megabytes of VRAM. I think it's DDR3 VRAM, all the way up to the GTX 980 that has 4 gigabytes of GDDR5 VRAM and is all the more advanced and all the more powerful. So there's quite a big gap between the power of the graphics cards. And basically, I've been pairing each graphics card, running tests and benchmarks with each graphics card, all the way from the puny GTS 250 by today's standards to the GTX 980, which is better by today's standards, and seeing which one is kind of the sweet spot for the 13 to 15-year-old computer. The Q6600 came out in 2007, so technically it's 13 years old. So what graphics card was the sweet spot, and what can you do once you reach that sweet spot? As a podcast listener, I will kind of let the cat out of a bag a little bit and give you the conclusion I came to which graphics card was the best. So before I actually upload the videos it's nowhere near finished yet. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks I'll have actually uploaded it to YouTube. Anyways, so out of the pool graphics card, it was the GTS 250, as I mentioned, then one AMD graphics card, AMD Radeon 7750 with 1 gigabyte of GDDR5, then a GTX 650 Ti, which with 2 gigabytes of DDR5, GTX 750 Ti with also 2 gigabytes of GDDR5, GTX 960 with 4 gigabytes of GDDR5, and a GTX 980 also with 4 gigabytes of GDDR5. Video RAM. So those 6, 250, 7750 from AMD, 650 Ti, 750 Ti, 960, and 980. Out of those 6, the graphics card I think that pairs best, and I'm looking at data here, I'm looking at the pie graphs and the line graphs and the charts that I've made. I've actually had Excel open. I've been inputting all the data from the different benchmarks I've been running. The best card out of my collection to pair up with the Q6600 is the GTX 750 Ti. The difference, and again, keep the Q6600 in mind, that's capped at 2.4 gigahertz. The GTX 750 Ti is it's the sweet spot because it's not that much better than the 650 Ti, and you're not getting that much of a performance benefit jumping up to the GTX 960. That is to say, with the Q6600, you get to the 650 Ti and onward, all the way up to the GTX 980, and you do not get much of a benefit. You get a few more frames, a couple more frames of benefit going from the 650 Ti all the way up to the GTX 980. That means you don't have to put a big expensive GTX 980 in there if a cheaper, much cheaper 650 Ti will get you almost the exact same performance. It plateaus. It is very much bound by the processor. The performance power of the graphics card is extremely bound to the CPU. Out of the hardware that I have, out of the graphics cards that I own, the 750 Ti works best with the Q6600, despite the 960 edging it out with just a few frames marginally, is simply that the 750 Ti is nearly as good as the 960 and the 980 with the Q6600, and the 750 Ti does not require a feed from the power supply. It does not require a 6-pin or an 8-pin or a 12-pin, whatever, power connection to the GPU. It runs right off of the PCI bus, right off of the PCI Express bus. So you don't need a big power supply in the computer to run the 750 Ti. It is the most efficient. To reiterate, going up to the GTX 980, which requires how many pins on the power? It requires 2 6-pins plus an additional 2 pins. So it requires 12 pins. No. Actually, no, 14 pins. Yeah, it requires 14 pins, 2 6-pin PCI Express. I don't want to get bogged down with that. It requires a lot of power. The 960 requires a 6-pin power connection off of the power supply, and the 750 Ti does not require any. It pulls its power from the PCI Express slot itself, and I think the PCI Express slot provides 70 watts, if I'm not mistaken, right off the top of my head. I know it's over 50 watts. It's less than 100 watts, at least on a 775 motherboard. So, anyways, what does that all mean? What is the takeaway? I said a whole lot of numbers there, a whole lot of jargon and serial numbers and product numbers and model numbers of things. All I'm trying to get the point across with this video and telling you all this is I'm trying to show you what you can reasonably hope to achieve if you ever come across an old or a hand-me-down or a free or a cheap 15-year-old PC. Can you game on a 15-year-old PC, 13-year-old PC, 15-year-old PC? What can you reasonably expect to get out of it? It's just so you don't get swindled by anything. It's just so you can manage your expectations. And I'll just tell you right now, a 750 Ti with a Q6600 is very viable, even in 2020. Now, here's the thing, though. If you're comparing it against a quad-core 8-thread, a 6-core 12-thread, a 12-core 24-thread, any of these multi-core processors of today paired with a GTX or an RTX 2080 Ti or whatever, for things like rendering out these podcasts, for instance, rendering out video files, rendering out your whatever you're working on, your photo editing, anything like that, any sort of big file that you need to render out, it makes you want to pull your hair out compared to a modern 2019, 2020 PC. That said, you can still do it. And I would be content if all I had was a quad-core Q6600 from 2007, a GTX 750 Ti, I want to say from 2013-ish. Let me look that up, actually. Several years old. GTX 750 Ti release date. It's wonderful to have Google right in front of us, and now if I can just bridge the gap. 2014. Okay, 2014 for the GTX 750 Ti. That's a 6-year-old GPU paired with a 13-year-old CPU. I would be happy to use that. I would play Rocket League happily. I would play even some modern AAA titles at 1080p. No problem if you ramp down the graphics settings. Do not even think that you're going to run a modern title, a modern AAA title on Steam with a 750 Ti and a Q6600 on full settings. No. And I would even wager that ramping down the visual settings, the visual quality of whatever game, modern game, that you may, for some modern games, you will probably have to settle for 30 frames a second. 30 frames a second in game. So you don't really want to be playing esports at 30 frames a second. But role-playing game, 30 frames a second, that's okay. I would prefer 60 frames a second. I would prefer 110 frames a second. I would prefer 144 and beyond frames a second on a modern PC. I would not settle for 30 frames a second on a modern 2020 PC. But managing expectations for these newer games running on older hardware, I think 30 frames a second is reasonable given what it is. Also interesting to note is that, well, I have some stats here in front of me. I will show you some stats, and we'll stick with the 750 Ti for now. So for reference, I paired that same 750 Ti with my more modern 4790K, Core i7 4790K. I think that also came out in 2014. So 750 Ti came out 2014, 4790K came out in 2014. Let me just Google that again for you. I really think it was 2014 off the top of my head. Yep, May 2014, right on the money. Okay, so 2014 flagship processor. So for the 1150 socket, the 4790K was the best processor you could get for the 1150 socket. I think there was a Xeon somewhere for some reason that came out on the 1150 socket that was the same, close in the benchmarks, close in terms of raw power. Anyways, doesn't matter. 4790K. And I had a slight overclock to 4.5 gigahertz, 4.6 gigahertz. So the 750 Ti in the R15 benchmark, let me pull it up here, I'm sorry. Okay, so the 750 Ti in the Cinebench R15 OpenGL graphics benchmark, 750 Ti with a Q6600 scored 37 frames per second. Now, that same benchmark, Cinebench R15 OpenGL benchmark, with the 750 Ti paired with the 4790K at 4.6 gigahertz, scored 87 frames a second. So the Q6600 got 37 frames a second. Then the 750 Ti paired with the 4790K, 87 frames a second. That is more than twice the performance. So even with the 750 Ti paired to the Q6600, you are still leaving a whole lot of performance on the table. And the benchmark I was running, one of the benchmarks I was running for whatever reason, was the Resident Evil 6 benchmark. Here, we saw with the Q6600, the 750 Ti got an overall score of 6,268. Paired with the 4790K, it was 7,613. So not that much better, but technically better. There was still performance left on the table by the Q6600. I hate throwing all these terms around because I know my audience is mixed for Geek Therapy Radio, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But for the computer geeks out there, I would imagine that you appreciate me throwing these numbers around. So that's why I do it. But again, for the non-computer savvy people that are just interested in maybe your new geek thing is gaming, PC gaming, and you don't know why you can't game the same way on an old system that you can on a new system. That's what I'm trying to get out here. The other thing I'm trying to get out here is that you don't want to just go get an old off-lease Dell Optiplex, whatever, with a Q6600 in it, and then go onto eBay and spend hundreds of dollars, spend $700, what have you, on an RTX 2080 or 2070, whatever it is, and then pair that $700 graphics card with a $10 CPU. That is a very bad match. You are wasting lots of money with that kind of pairing. Don't pair a new graphics card with a 15-year-old CPU. That's bad. Don't do that. Try to get a GPU more on the era of whatever the processor is that you've come across. Your grandma may have an old PC and then she might leave it to you, or she might give it to you. You may have a relative that has this old PC and they want to get it off their hands. However you come across an old 15-year-old PC, what I'm trying to get across to you, if it's your new geek thing, is don't buy the newest, latest, and greatest $700 graphics card and throw it in there. You will have wasted hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Get a 750 Ti, get a 650 Ti, even something around that era, and you'll find that that is about the performance maximum, the sweet spot, so to speak, thereabouts, with a 15-year-old processor. And what is a 750? I'm going to do 650 Ti. What does a 650 Ti cost nowadays? I'm going to go to eBay right now. We get to do these things on the podcast, geek out about this stuff, and go down these little rabbit holes. 650 Ti. Let's see, on eBay. Oh, I gotta take my price cap off of there. There's definitely nothing between $1 and $10. No matches found. What are you talking about? Let's just refresh this whole thing. Go back to eBay. Again, we're looking for 650 Ti. How much is a 650 Ti on eBay? Sorry about that. 650 Ti. Let's go ahead and select buy it now. I'm seeing one for $70, but let's click on buy it now and whittle this down a little bit. Since I would imagine a 650 Ti is a little bit less than a 750 Ti and be almost there, nearly identical as far as performance is concerned. Where's the freaking buy it now? Okay, I'm seeing used GTX 650 Ti's for as low as $35 buy it now, and it looks legit. Let's see what the shipping is, because sometimes they price things low and then they jack up the shipping, but it's kind of a smaller graphics card. Okay, shipping is $18. So about $50 gets you a 650 Ti. And believe me, that a 650 Ti is still good for modern gaming. You pair a 650 Ti with a modern processor and you get every bit you can out of that 650 Ti, you'll still find that, especially with esports, you have a very capable video card. So, 650 Ti, Q6600, I think that's a fairly good matchup. The point is, and because we can argue, and people will give you suggestions all over the place for what graphics card pairs best with a Q6600. The point is, no matter the suggestion, don't take the suggestion saying you should spend $500, $600, $700 on the latest, greatest graphics card. That's bad advice. Keep the graphics card around $50 or below, $60 or below, and you'll be a happy camper if you just so happen to come across a 15-year-old PC. It'll get along just fine, chug along just fine, do your Facebook just fine, do your YouTube just fine, 1080, watching YouTube 1080p, high definition, just fine. Like I said, I would be content using an old Q6600 and a 650 or 750 Ti graphics card and 8 gigabytes of RAM, even in 2020. Would I prefer a faster modern PC? Would a modern PC be that much faster than a Q6600? Holy crap. A newer PC would blow a Q6600 out of the water. And I should also mention, but with that Q6600, especially if you're using a solid-state drive instead of a traditional optical magnetic hard drive, if you're using solid-state storage for your operating system, it is snappy. Snappy, snappy, snappy. Games load really fast. It boots up really fast. It's crazy. To that end, if you have an old computer, the single best upgrade you can possibly do to it is to put a solid-state drive in there. Get your tech-savvy nephew or grandson or son or daughter and clone your old hard drive to a solid-state drive. You will have the fastest computer you've yet to witness, depending on your computer computer savvy and computer literacy, depending on what you're used to. If grandma has a computer in her kitchen from 2005, and it's the only thing that's available when you go visit grandma, just, you know what, you sneak a solid state drive in there and say, Grandma, I fixed your computer. Oh! Yeah, solid state drive. I've mentioned on the show before that one of my most memorable moments at Micro Center was when I overheard a customer asking a sales associate, is solid state drive really worth it? Is it really that much faster than a traditional hard drive? And we were just like, yes. Yes. Is the sky blue? It is that definitive of an answer. Yes. Solid state drive is the way to make any relatively modern computer, I would say anything post SATA connection, faster. So 2005-ish, 2006-ish, that era PC, slap a solid state 2.5-inch SATA or SSD in there. Shoot. Oh my goodness, 35 minutes and at least 10 of them chewed up by urinal boogers. That's going to do it for Geek Therapy Radio today. Thank you for listening to Geek Therapy Radio. I truly enjoy having each and every one of you listen to Geek Therapy Radio, and that you enjoy it. Go back and listen to the last podcast I uploaded. Asaf from Israel was my guest, 8 hours away in Israel. It's a fascinating discussion I had with him. But I guess until tomorrow, be good to each other, my geeks, and I will see you then.
I'm tasting freedom. Just give up now, 'cause you will never have control. My life is paid for, so what are you here for? I'm safe inside the light, so leave me alone, alone. I am stronger than you think. I believe you'll never get the best of me. Why don't buy the lies you sell? My heart belongs to someone else. I am stronger, stronger than you think. I know your intentions. I've seen the way you work. Since you love destruction, this is gonna hurt. I am stronger than you think. I believe you'll never get the best of me. Why don't buy the lies you sell? My heart belongs to someone else. I am stronger, stronger than you think. I am stronger, I am stronger. I believe I am stronger, stronger than you think.
Geek Therapy Radio, Saturday night at 10 on KPRC 950. Or listen anytime on our iHeartRadio app.